Hey everyone, we made friends! Check out our new friends, Courtney and Amanda's podcast, A Nefarious Nightmare. They have several episodes out and they tell true crime and spooky stories. They like to say they are roasting serial killers and marshmallows. Check them out right after this.
Hey, I'm Courtney.
And I'm Amanda.
And this is A Nefarious Nightmare.
We cover true crime and the paranormal.
Weird, twisty, and spooky things that are sure to make you think, cry, or laugh.
We have had a few wonderful guests, such as a paranormal investigator, a really cool podcast, and Jason Vukovich and his sister.
We've also had a ton of humorous moments, and we intend to have more. I come packing the dad jokes. Well, puns. I come with puns abound.
We raise awareness about the senseless acts committed against victims while roasting serial killers and marshmallows around a Zoom bonfire.
Our listeners are definitely the best, and we are their biggest fans.
So join us. Come on in. All are welcome, and let's dive into these cases.
You can find us on any podcast platform and YouTube. Be sure to find us, hit subscribe, and share us with your friends.
We do have great life advice, such as don't be a Richard.
Yes, and wear deodorant. We don't wish to smell you.
All are welcome to A Nefarious Nightmare.
This is Histories and Mysteries. I'm Ashley.
I'm Jessica.
And I'm Rochelle.
And on this week's episode, it is our Ripper episode.
Which is sad that we can have a Ripper episode and that neither of the stories are about Jack the Ripper.
Or Stefan Salvatore.
Oh my goodness. Jessica. You're so stupid. Rochelle, do you watch The Vampire Diaries?
I read the books when they first came out and then watched like 2 seasons of it before I was like, I don't like it.
Gotcha. That's what, I don't know if you caught it, that's what she was referencing.
Yeah. He was a Ripper. For Edward Cullen, I think he was a Ripper at first.
Was he?
I don't know. I could be wrong.
I know, that was a good one, Jess. I liked that.
Thanks. Okay, so Ashley's going to be doing her Yorkshire Ripper episode.
Yep.
And I am going to be doing, part 1 of the Hollywood Ripper.
I want to cheer for it, but like also I can't, like, I don't want to cheer for Rippers.
It's not a cheerful.
No.
It's not a cheering situation.
Cheer for strippers. No, cheer for rippers.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely cheer for stripper and tip your strippers.
Well, it's funny. I saw this this meme like forever ago, and it said, "What if there was a typo and it was supposed to be Jack the Stripper instead of Jack the Ripper?"
He's just out there trying to make a living, man.
Exactly.
Oh, that's funny. Goodness. All right. Well, since these are both really long, I'm gonna jump right in.
Okay.
They're also really awful. Mine gets kind of graphic in some areas, so viewer discretion is advised.
Same.
So I got my sources from this really awesome website called so it's like ExecuLink is how, but I think it's supposed to be more like execution, so like ExecuLink.
Ew.
And they talk, like, each victim that he had, they had a whole write-up of the victim, like who she was, what she was doing with her life, what happened, and then at the end they had a quote from him about that specific victim.
Ew.
Oh.
Yeah, it was a really, really good website for like this type of stuff, because he did, spoiler alert, confess to everything, so they have tons of quotes of his confessions of his victims.
Wow.
So I used that website a lot. I also used Wikipedia, all that's interesting.
Ooh.
And Leads Live. So,
Oh, I love ATI.
yeah, you do.
Yeah, I do.
Maybe one day they'll sponsor us.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
So I have a Leeds murder story.
Oh,
which I will share before you get into this.
Okay.
When I was going to Leeds in university for the semester, I got on the airplane and the sweet British lady beside me was like, "Oh, where are you going?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm going to Leeds for the semester." And she's like, "Oh." I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "Well, you better be careful." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And she's like, "There, a girl just got murdered there."
Oh no.
Oh my goodness.
And yeah, it turns out that a guy did murder a girl and left her body in a dumpster, not very far away from where I was staying.
What is going on in Leeds?
Gosh, England in general. England's got some baddies.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was my welcome to the city.
Lovely. Lovely.
Well, I'm glad you did not get murdered, Rochelle.
Yes.
I found the article. It was a guy that was murdered.
Ah.
Leeds body in bin.
In a bin.
Murder.
Gross.
3 men who murdered a man before dumping his body in a bin and setting it alight have been charged.
Ah!
Michael Ayres' body was found in Hyde Park Terrace near St. Augustine's Church in Leeds. And that's like right close to where my residence was.
Oh my goodness. Got it. Okay, start your story.
Okay, serial killer. So this is about Peter Sutcliffe, aka the Yorkshire Ripper, aka asshole extraordinaire. I put that in my notes.
I love it.
So he was born on June 2nd, 1946 to John and Kathleen Sutcliffe in Bingley, Yorkshire. One of his brothers has since said that their dad was an abusive alcoholic, recalling one story where their dad broke a beer bottle over Peter's head for sitting in like the dad's chair at Christmas.
It's Sheldon.
Is that what happened to Sheldon?
No, but he has his chair. You know, his spot.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I gotcha. I was like, Sheldon got hit over the head by his dad? It was reported that Peter was shy and withdrawn boy, which would make sense if he was being abused at home. There's not any other reports to confirm this. So who knows? Anyway, for one reason or another, Peter quit school at the age of 15 and took on just a whole bunch of jobs after that. Twice he was a grave digger, which news stories really clung on to, you know, like grave digger found to be serial killer. Like he did it for like 10 minutes. So,
Okay.
And they said that even in this job, his coworkers commented about how he had such a dark sense of humor. He also worked in his life as in a packaging factory and a truck driver. He was fired from one job for stealing used tires.
Oh, lovely.
So it was in his teens that Peter started to develop an obsession with prostitutes. There was a story that went around that maybe one time he was conned out of money by a prostitute and her pimp, but no one really knows if that's for sure or not. And it's not even really, I mean, it's not a reason to go on and murder 13 people, but you know, whatever.
Yeah.
So either way, he started driving down to Leeds Street and just would watch prostitutes. So he would watch them interact. He would watch them get picked up, but he never picked any up himself. He just kind of watched. In this story, you can see a lot of like escalation. Like you see how he slowly escalates each step of the way. So at this point, he's just watching. So after he watched for a while, he decided, hey, I'm going to try some stuff. So he escalated to assault. And in 1969, Peter was driving around with a friend and told his friend to stop the car. Peter got out of the car and like walked away so that like the friend couldn't see him anymore. And then he came back out of breath a while later. Come to find out, he had followed a prostitute to a garage, hit her over the head with a brick in a sock. He said, quote, I got out of the car, went across the road and hit her. The force of the impact tore the toe off the sock and whatever was in it came out. I went back to the car and got in it. Yeah.
What?
She lived.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
And the police were easily able to find Peter because she was able to describe him and the car he was in. And when they came to him, he's like, yeah, I did hit her, but only with my hand. Like, I don't know what they were talking about. And the police said he was lucky because she didn't want anything more to do with the incident, and they dropped it and left.
Oh my gosh.
And don't we see that so much in serial killers? They have some contact with the police and get away with it in the beginning.
Always.
So it wasn't until 1975 that we have another confirmed attack, but I'm sure there were plenty in between that we just don't know about, because I cannot see someone like him waiting 6 years before doing anything else.
Yeah, it was probably just
Again.
minor stuff against the
Right.
prostitutes, and they weren't followed
Nobody-
through with.
Yeah, exactly. But in 1975, because the other point I was gonna make is because he goes from just like hitting a girl in the head with rocks to what I'm about to tell you, and there had to be an escalation, like
Oh, of
ramp
course.
sometime in between here. So on July 5th in 1975 in Keighley, England, he ran into a young girl named Anna Rogalowski. It's spelled Rogulskyj.
Okay.
Who was walking alone. She was okay. This is not funny, but the weapon he used, it's called a ball peen hammer. I did not know that that's what it was called. And I was like, that is a horrible name. My mother-in-law's here. It's my son's first birthday party this weekend, and I was finishing up this story, and I was like, a ball peen hammer. And she's like, what? And I was like a peen? And the first word is ball. And I'm 5. So anyway, back to the really sad stuff. So she was struck unconscious with a ball peen hammer. And then he slashed her stomach with a
What?
Yeah. So going from hitting a girl in the head with rocks to this, there had to have been something in between, I think.
It could have also, like, remember when I talked about it before, and it was kind of like that fantasy in their heads, and then
Yeah.
it becomes not enough, so then they
Yeah.
have to do stuff like that.
Yeah, that's true. Thankfully, a neighbor, it just said disturbed him. So I don't know, like if a neighbor came out or a neighbor shouted or something. So he fled the scene and the girl lived.
Oh, good.
Yeah, she had a lot of obvious psychological trauma. She said, quote, I've been afraid to go out much because I feel people are staring and pointing at me. The whole thing is making my life a misery. I sometimes wish I had died in the attack.
Aw, sweet
know.
babe.
I know. 2 months later, Olive, which I love the name Olive.
I love the name Olive.
I do too. I couldn't ever name my daughter though, because my son is Oliver. Can't have an Olive and an Oliver.
Why not?
Aw, that'd be cute twins.
That would be cute.
Yeah, if they were twins, that'd be super cute. So 2 months later, Olive Smelt was attacked in the same way as Anna. She was struck with a hammer several times in her head from behind. He then disarranged her clothing, and I quote disarranged because it said disarranged. It didn't really go into detail what that meant, so we'll leave it at that. And
Weird.
slashed her lower back.
Ow! Ah!
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. Fortunately, he was interrupted again, and Anna was left alive.
Oh my goodness.
She was able to tell reporters that the man who attacked her had a Yorkshire accent, but apparently she was just ignored because she is a dumb, puny woman, and how dare we have any ideas?
Oh, of course.
Back in the 70s. So 7 days later, he struck again. This time the girl was 14 years old.
Oh no.
Her name was Tracy Brown. Sutcliffe struck from behind in the head, but lights from a passing car spooked him because he's a fucking bitch baby, and he ran off. Tracy did survive, but she required brain surgery. And interestingly enough, Sutcliffe was never convicted of this attack, but he did confess to it later on in 1992.
What? Why not?
They never knew that it was related to him until he
Oh.
finally said, oh, hey, by the way, I did this one too. Then in October 1975, police received a phone call that a woman's body was found with horrible injuries, some of which the police would not disclose to the public. So this is the first time he's actually killed someone that we know of. The woman was identified as 28-year-old Wilma McCann. She was the mother of 4 children. Poor Wilma was struck in the back of the head twice, stabbed in the throat 2 times, stabbed 2 times in the right rib cage, 3 times in the left rib cage, and had 9 stab wounds around her belly button.
What?
Yeah.
That's insane.
That's so many. You'll see his killings. He goes into a rage.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. So police put all hands on deck and had about 150 police officers on the case. They conducted 11,000 interviews after this murder, but didn't catch Sutcliffe, obviously, because he's a serial killer. He goes on.
11,000
interviews.
That's insane.
Yeah. Sadly, this is just kind of an extra fact. Wilma McCann's oldest daughter committed suicide in 2007 after what they said, quote, years of anguish and depression of her mother's murder.
Aww.
So he gets into this that he had, and I'll read a little bit about his thoughts later on. But Wilma was a prostitute, and he kind of gets in, and that's how he justifies his murders, that she's just a prostitute, so it doesn't matter. And, you know, they're all evil and da 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 da. So most of these women we will talk about are prostitutes. I'm not going to keep mentioning it because just because you're a prostitute doesn't mean you deserve to die.
Yeah, exactly. But it kind of seems like he's trying to be like a wannabe Jack the Ripper, right?
Kind of. Yeah. And I think that's why he got the Ripper name, right? Because he kept, and he was trying to like clean the streets or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I do have a quote from him, since I pulled a quote from him from after like every like next step, or I don't want to say like significant murder because they're all significant, but like this was his first murder. So this is what he said. That was the incident that started it all off. I was driving through Leeds late at night. I'd been to somewhere having a couple of pints. You'll know the date better than me. It was Wilma McCann. I was in a Ford Capri K registered, a lime green one with a black roof with a sun grill in the back window. I saw this woman thumbing a lift where the Weatherby Road branches to the right, but you can carry straight on. She was wearing some white trousers and a jacket. I stopped and asked her how far she was going. She said, "Not far. Thanks for stopping." And she jumped in. I was in quite a good mood and we were talking on the way. She said something about just before we stopped about, did I want business? To me, I didn't know what she meant by this. Pause. Fucking lies. You knew exactly what she meant. You knew exactly what you were doing. Yeah.
What a turd.
Yeah. You'll see in his quotes here how much he tries to explain things away. It's ridiculous. But okay. To me, I didn't know what she meant by this. I asked her to explain, and straight away a scornful tone came in her voice, which took me by surprise because she had been so pleasant. She said, "Bloody hell, do I have to spell it out?" She said it as though it was a challenge. My reaction was to agree to go with her. She told me where to park the car. It was just off the road. We turned left. We came to this field which sloped up. I parked near a field. We sat there for a minute talking. Then all of a sudden her tone changed and said, "Well, what are you waiting for? Let's get on with it." Before we stopped, she had said that it would cost a $5. I was a bit surprised. I was expecting it to be a bit romantic. I think she had been drinking because she was being irrational. I couldn't have intercourse in a split second. I had to be aroused. Honey, she got 4 kids. She got places to be.
Yeah, literally.
At this point, she opened the car door and got out. She slammed the door and shouted, I'm going. This is going to take you all fucking day. She shouted something like, "You're fucking useless." I'm 7,000% sure that this did not happen the way he's saying it.
Oh, probably not.
Yeah. I suddenly felt myself seething with rage. I got out of the car wanting to hit her to pay her back for the insult. I went to her and said, "Hang on a minute. Don't go off like that." She was only 3 or 4 strides away. She turned and came back to me. She said something like, "Oh, you can fucking manage it now, can you?" She sounded as though she was taunting me. I said, "There's not much room in the car. Can we do it on the grass?" This was my idea of hitting her. She said, "I'm not going to do it here, bloody well next to the car." With that, she stormed up to the hill into the field. I had a toolbox on the back seat of the car, and I took a hammer out of the toolbox. I followed her into the field. I took my car coat off and carried it over my arm. I had the hammer in my right hand. I put my coat on the grass. She sat down on the coat. She unfastened her trousers. She said, "Come on." I hope she said this. "Come on, then, get it over with." I said, "Don't worry, I will." I then hit her with a hammer on her head. I was stood up at the time behind her. I think I hit her on the top of the head. I hit her once or twice on the head. She fell down flat on her back and started making a horrible noise, like a moaning, gurgling noise.
Oh, no.
I thought, God, what have I done? I knew I had gone too far. I ran to the car intending to drive off. I sat on the car for a while. I could see her arm moving. I was in a numb panic. I still had the hammer in my hand. I put it back in my toolbox. I half expected her to get up and realized I would be in serious trouble. I thought the best way out of the mess was to make sure she couldn't tell anybody. I took a knife out of the toolbox. It had a wood handle with one sharp side. The blade was about 7 inches long, about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch wide. I went to her. She was lying on her back. I thought that to make it certain she was dead, I would stab her in places like the lung and the throat. I stabbed her at least 4 times, once in the throat before I stabbed her in the body. I pulled her blouse or whatever it was and her bra so I could see where I was stabbing her. I was in a blind panic when I was stabbing her just to make sure she wouldn't tell anyone. What a damn stupid thing to do just to keep somebody quiet. If I was thinking logical at the time, I would have stopped and told someone I hit her with the hammer. That was the turning point. I realized I overreacted at the time. Nothing I have done since has affected me like this.
What?
Then he said, he goes back, he gets his coat back, and he gets back in his car and drove away. He said, I was then living at my mother-in-law's house at 44 Tanton Crescent, Clayton, Bradford. I was very frightened and don't even remember driving there. I thought I was bound to get caught. I parked my car outside my house. I'm trying to remember if it was my mother-in-law's house I was living in then. I thought it out now. It must have been her house. I looked over my clothing before I went to the house. I went straight to the bathroom, washed my hands, and went to bed. So he, at this point, is married, and he just murders someone and goes home to his wife.
It's like John Wayne Gacy.
Uh-huh. So his next attack is January of 1976. Sutcliffe attacked 42-year-old Emily Jackson by stabbing her 52 times with a sharpened screwdriver.
Oh, no.
And then stomped on her thigh, leaving behind a boot impression.
I don't know why a screwdriver is just worse.
Yeah, it's awful. So poor Emily had just started prostituting. She had been convinced to prostitute by her husband because they were in a horrible financial position. So she had just started and meets, unfortunately, Peter Sutcliffe. So 4 months later, I meant to say too, Wilma McCann, the one that we just had the quote about him from, she was 100 feet from her house.
No.
Yeah. So 4 months after he attacked Emily Jackson, he attacked 20-year-old Marcella Claxton, who was coming home from a party when she accepted a ride from Sutcliffe. She had to pee, so he pulled the car over, and when she got out, he hit her over the head with his hammer. After her awful attack, I don't know if he didn't realize he didn't kill her or if someone came up. He thought he killed her. I'm trying to read forward and I'm not doing a great job of it. She was able to crawl to a phone box and call an ambulance.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. She did survive, and she was able to testify at his trial years down the road. But unfortunately, because of the attack, she suffered a miscarriage. She was 4 months pregnant. And she had to have several operations on her brain. She also, for the rest of her life, suffered from severe blackouts and chronic depression. Unfortunately, police did not draw a connection between her and Sutcliffe's other victims because she wasn't a prostitute. So,
what?
Yeah, so this was not taken into consideration at the time.
This guy, to me, is kind of a combination of Jack the Ripper and who is it? Ted Bundy. Thank you.
Oh,
brain.
Okay.
Thank you, brain.
Yeah, with his random bursts of craziness.
Yeah.
All right, so February of the next year, Irene Richardson was attacked with a hammer in almost the same spot of Sutcliffe's previous victim, Marcella Claxton. She did die from her injuries. After she had died, Sutcliffe mutilated her body with a knife.
Why?
I don't know. The police did find tire tracks during or near her murder scene, and these tracks belonged to any of 26 different cars. And of these 26 different cars, there were 100,000 vehicles in West Yorkshire. So, like,
What?
not super helpful.
Oh.
Okay, I do have another quote from him here. So he said, the next one I did was Irene Richardson. I then owned a red Corsair and also a white Corsair. I had both of these at the same time, and I honestly can't remember which one I was using that night. I drove to Leeds after the pub shut. It was my intention to find a prostitute to make it one more less. See his, I'm cleaning up the streets, make it one more less.
Yeah.
I
Ugh.
saw this girl walking in some cross streets in the middle of the Vice Estate near Big Club. I stopped my car and she got in without me saying a word. I told her I might not have wanted her. She said, I'll show you a good time. You're not going to send me away, are you? She told me to drive to the park. At this time, you knew where I was parking them up. She told me where to drive, and we came to this big field, which was on my left. I drove off the road onto the field and stopped near some toilets. She just wanted to use the toilet, so she got out and went over to them. She came back and said they were locked. Before she went to the toilet, she took off her coat and placed it on the ground. When she came back, she said she would have a wee on the ground. She took her boots off and placed them on the ground. Then she crouched down to have a pee. By this time, I was out of the car and I had the hammer in my hand. As she was crouching down, I hit her on the head from behind at least twice, maybe 3 times.
Oh.
She fell down. I then lifted up her clothes and slashed her in the lower abdomen and also slashed her throat.
Oh, nothing.
I left her lying face down and I covered her up with her coat. I put her knee boots on top of her before I covered her up. I then got into my car and drove off the field. I cannot remember whether I drove off or backed off. When I got to the road, I saw a couple sitting on a bench near the toilets. I did not see a car. I was living with my wife
Ugh.
at 6 Garden Lane, Heaton. I drove straight home. I looked at my clothes before I went in. I did not see any blood stains. I was wearing jeans and I believe I had some boots on. I don't remember throwing any of my clothes away. I kept the Stanley knife, but I haven't seen it for a long time. I think I may have lent it to someone. I'm still not sure which car I was in, the red or the white Corsair. I sold the white Corsair first to a lad called Ronald Baker who lives at 46. It's really detailed. I kept the red one for several months. By this time, after Richardson's killing, prostitutes became an obsession with me and I couldn't stop myself. It was like some sort of drug.
Ugh.
In 1977, Sutcliffe murdered Patricia Tina Atkinson in her own house. Police found a boot print on her clothes. He then murdered 16-year-old Jane McDonald, who the news sources said was the only innocent victim, which what the fuck?
What?
They're all innocent.
Literally all innocent.
Yeah, but she wasn't a prostitute, so that's why she was the innocent victim.
Oh my. Okay.
He said, quote, the next one I did, I still feel terrible about. It was a young girl, Jane McDonald. I read recently about her father dying of a broken heart, and it brought it all back to me. I realized what sort of a monster I had become. I believed at the time I did it that she was a prostitute. So, like, he's basically saying it's okay if she's a prostitute, but since she wasn't, he feels bad.
Literally, like, what
Yeah.
the fuck? Like,
Yeah.
just because it's not what you were going for doesn't make it okay or
yeah.
not okay. It's like,
Yeah. Oh my
ugh,
gosh.
I hate people.
When I saw in the papers that McDonald was so young and not a prostitute, I felt like someone inhuman. And I realized that it was a devil driving me against my will and that I was a beast. When the Ripper came up in conversation at work or in a pub, I was able to detach my mind from the fact that it was me they were talking about. And I was able to discuss it normally. This amazed me at times that I was able to do this.
What?
After Jane's murder, Sutcliffe attacked Maureen Long. He was interrupted and thought that when he was leaving her, she would for sure die, but she didn't.
Oh, good.
Yeah, someone found her, and by the time they found her, she was already suffering from hypothermia and was hospitalized for 9 weeks, but she did live. Unfortunately, from this attack, a witness misidentified Sutcliffe's car and sent the police on a chase that never amounted to anything. In October of 1977, he murdered Jean Jordan and realized that the 5-pound note he had given to like pay her before murdering her could be traced. So he tried to go back to her body and get it, but he couldn't find it. But
Haha, loser.
right? But a local dairy worker named Bruce Jones, who went on to be an actor, was looking around the area for like some bricks, I guess, and he found the 5-pound note
Good.
in Jean's bag. And the police were able to trace it to a specific bank. And then because of that, they were able to trace it to who got paid with it. It was given out in a payroll. So they were able to trace it to specific employees.
Ooh.
But it was 8,000 people. But that's still less than they had. They interviewed all 8,000 people, including Sutcliffe.
Oh my goodness. Of course they did.
Yes, but the police thought his alibi was solid and moved on. In December, Sutcliffe attacked Marilyn Moore, but she also survived. And she was able to give a description.
Good.
Yeah, they also found tire tracks at her scene that matched the previous tire tracks that they had found at the other scene.
Nice.
So they were kind of getting close.
Like, thank goodness he's awful at this.
Right?
Yeah, he's not very good at his job
No.
as a serial killer.
No,
This
he's
guy.
not.
No.
He sucks at it.
In 1978, he murdered 21-year-old Yvonne Pearson. He used the ball peen hammer and hit her over the head many times.
Okay, that's not good.
No, this gets really bad. So buckle up. Another car pulled up to him. So he was outside of his car with her. And I guess this field had like a bunch of shit in it. And there was like a discarded couch there. And so he had hit her in the head, and this other car pulled up like right next to him and stopped. And she was dying. So she was like making noises. So he took some horsehair that had been used to stuff the discarded couch and shoved it into her mouth so hard that it went partially down her throat, and then plugged her nose. And then at some point he checked to see if she was still alive, and she was. So he plugged her nose again. And then finally the car that was parked next to him left, and he said he was overcome with rage, kicked her in the head and body, and jumped down on her chest with both feet.
No.
Yeah, she did not make it. 10 days later, he killed 18-year-old Helen Ritka. And in 1979, he killed 19-year-old Josephine Whitaker. After this, police received a tape message saying, "I'm Jack. I see you're having no luck catching me. I have the greatest respect for you, George, but Lord, you're no nearer catching me now than 4 years ago when I started."
Hey, but he goes by Jack. So like that really solidifies the whole Jack the Ripper thing.
Yeah. And the man on the tape had a Wearside accent. So they started looking in that area. But unfortunately, it was a wild goose chase because it was a hoax.
Yeah.
So police wasted months on this lead. And oddly enough, fast forward 2005, they were able to use DNA on the envelope and the letter or whatever to determine that it was a man named John Samuel Humble, who at the time was an unemployed and an alcoholic. And they actually arrested him in 2005 for attempt to pervert the course of justice. And he was convicted and sentenced to 8 years in prison.
Good.
But that was 30 years later.
Who cares? You're still a dipshit.
Yeah. All right. So on September 1st, he murdered 20-year-old Barbara Leach. And at this point, Sutcliffe had been interviewed a few times by the police, but had never really been a suspect. So in April of 1980, our dum-dum Sutcliffe was arrested for drunk driving.
Good.
While awaiting trial, he murdered 47-year-old Marguerite Walls.
What?
And 20-year-old Jacqueline Hill.
Oh my gosh.
He also attacked 3 more women who survived: Maureen Lee, Teresa Sykes, and this name, Upadhyaya Bandara. It's UphaDya. Finally, on November 25th, 1980, Trevor Birdsall. So he was the one who owned the truck from Sutcliffe's very first attack, that he just was like, hey, stop the truck, got out, disappeared, came back out of breath. This guy finally reported Sutcliffe to the police as a suspect. I'm not really sure what changed his mind or what had him do that, but he finally did. On January 2nd, 1981, Sutcliffe was arrested by police while having 24-year-old prostitute Olivia Reavers with him, so they probably saved her life.
Good.
Police found that he had fake tags and he was arrested. He was then questioned again about the Ripper case because he did match a lot of the physical characteristics, because it was him. And when the police returned to where he was arrested, they found a knife, a hammer, and a rope.
Oh my gosh.
The police also obtained a warrant to search Sutcliffe's house, and they also questioned his wife. This is weird. This is really, really weird. So in this whole murder and attack spree he went on, they never mention a sexual component of it, but apparently there was one, because they said when Sutcliffe was stripped at the police station, he was wearing an inverted V-neck jumper under his trousers. So the sleeves have been pulled up over his legs and the V-neck exposed his genital area. The front of the elbows were padded to protect his knees, as presumably he knelt over his victims' bodies.
What?
Yeah. So there was some sexual component, I think, maybe it was just strictly for the knees, but then I guess you could buy knee pads. I don't know.
Okay, hold on. Aside from the fact that is like awful.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Imagine how ridiculous that looked.
Can you imagine the poor police officer that stripped him down and was like, what the fuck is this?
I just really loved Rochelle's heavy pneumonia breathing in the background. Well, she processed
the V-neck sweater.
I was like trying to not laugh at that because
it's wild.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Like, how did he come up with that? Like, you would be perfect.
This is gonna be great. After this, I guess he thought it was enough of a thing where he confessed to everything. They said he confessed really calmly. It was really eerie. He said that God told him to murder the women. He said, quote, "The women I killed were filth, bastard prostitutes who were littering the streets. I was just cleaning up the place a bit." But then he pleaded not guilty to 13 charges of murder, but guilty to manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility.
What does that even mean?
So it's part of English law, and it is, quote, one of the partial defenses that reduce the offense from murder to manslaughter if successful, termed voluntary manslaughter. So basically, voluntary manslaughter.
So dumb.
His defense was that he was a tool of God and that he heard voices that ordered him to kill prostitutes. He said they started while he was a gravedigger and came from the headstone of a man named Bronislaw Zapolsky, and that the voice was God, but like not Bronislaw. So why was it coming from this guy's grave? But it was God, whatever. He did plead guilty to 7 charges of attempted murder. And so the prosecution was going to accept this deal because he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. But the trial judge was like, I need a super detailed explanation of why the prosecution wants to accept this plea. And after 2 hours and 40 minutes, the judge was like, nah, this is going to a jury trial.
Good.
So the jury trial started on May 5th, 1981, lasted 2 weeks. He was found guilty of murder on all counts and sentenced to 20 concurrent life sentences.
Jeez.
Dustin and I just had this conversation not long ago. I am desperate to be called for jury duty. I want it so bad. And he is like, what? Like, no, like I don't ever want to do that.
I would love to go for jury duty.
I think it'd be really fun. I mean, it's probably boring as hell because you probably get like a stupid case, but
Yeah.
I think it'd be really cool.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
So the jury rejected the evidence of the 4 psychiatrists that said Sutcliffe had paranoid schizophrenia. And they think that they probably said like rejected that because they did have evidence of a prison officer who heard Sutcliffe say to his wife that if he convinced people he was mad, then he might get 10 years in a loony bin. So,
What?
the trial judge said that Sutcliffe was beyond redemption and hoped that he would never leave prison. He then recommended a minimum of 30 years to be served before parole was even an option, meaning that he couldn't even go up for parole until 2011. But on July 16th, 2010, the High Court issued Sutcliffe with a whole life tariff, meaning that he never got parole. He was going to be in there forever.
Good.
Yeah. And after his trial, Sutcliffe admitted to 2 other attacks, other than the ones we just talked about, but prosecution never went for those because they said it wasn't in the public interest and the victims wanted to remain anonymous.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. At first I was like, what? And then I read the second one.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
It's like, okay, that makes so much more sense.
Yeah. And on November 13th, 2020, the idiot died after going to the hospital for contracting COVID. He had a suspected heart attack 2 weeks prior and had lots of other issues, which he refused treatment for, such as diabetes. So then he, of course, got COVID and died in prison.
Good.
And that is the story of the Yorkshire Ripper.
Holy crap.
Pretty awful.
Cannot fucking get that image of a guy wearing an upside down V-neck
No.
shirt with his dick just hanging out of his neck.
Just like flopping out, like bloop, bloop.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, I just wanted to fact check my story about my Leeds murder. It was in fact a man that was murdered by 3 guys. And not only did they leave him in a bin, a dumpster, but they set it on fire.
Oh my gosh.
Lovely.
I like how you just fact checked your own story that you just told.
Maybe you should do that story, Rochelle.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not that exciting. They just like wanted to get back at this guy over some like money or something.
Oh, gotcha.
It's like
Okay.
a bunch of drunk assholes, but
Gotcha.
So, who wants to hear another awful Ripper story?
Me, I guess.
After Ashley's awful story that she told very well.
Oh, thanks.
it doesn't include clothing worn in the wrong way. I don't want it.
Well, sucks to be you because you're fucking getting it. So, I found this really awesome website that put everything in order for me. So it was fantastic.
Nice.
I also watched a 48 Hours episode, probably I think a year or 2 ago when we were just starting our podcast. And this story was at the very top of my list, and I'm getting it to it today.
Finally.
So I used freshedits.com and then the 48 Hours episode.
Nice.
So this is all about the Hollywood Ripper.
Ew.
Michael Gargiulo appeared to the outside world to be an ordinary air conditioner repairman.
Mm.
He wasn't your average person, though. Gargiulo planned the right moment to attack women in their homes for 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and once he arrived in Southern California, he was dubbed the Hollywood Ripper. With a star prosecution witness who also happens to be a movie star and a killer macabre nickname, the case against the Hollywood Ripper had all the makings of a Hollywood thriller.
Yeah.
It's unclear how he got away with his crimes for nearly a decade, but his victims finally saw the justice they deserved, even if it was years later.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. Like, he went on for 15 years. At that point, he probably thinks he's tough shit. Like, nobody can touch him.
Oh, yeah. He thinks that he is just the best of the best,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it shows as we go along.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, who was he? Michael Gargiulo was born in 1976 in Glenview, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago. He was one of 7 children, and he claimed he was abused by his father and his siblings, despite the fact that this was never proven.
Okay.
So we're starting off the same as Peter Sutcliffe.
Yeah.
Gargiulo had a reputation as the neighborhood bully with a terrible temper as a child.
Ooh.
People who knew him claimed he could switch from normal to insane in a matter of seconds.
Ooh, that's never good.
Gargiulo was described as inhuman by local children when he would snap as a teenager.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Because of his fast temper, he scared everyone, and no one wanted to mess with him. Despite his menacing appearance, though, he did have friends in the community. His temper would soon lose control, though, and he wouldn't be able to control his awful, awful urges.
Oh, geez.
Gargiulo's boyhood house was close to the Piccaccio family. Gargiulo's friend, Doug Piccaccio, was a classmate of Gargiulo's at Glenbrook South High School, where Doug's older sister, Trisha, was also a student. She graduated from high school in 1993, holla to my birth year.
Oh my God.
Sorry that you feel so old. And she planned to enroll at Purdue University in Indiana the following year.
Oh, Purdue.
Is there something fascinating about Purdue?
No, it's just a good college.
Oh, okay. She got together with pals for dinner and a scavenger hunt on Friday, August 13th, 1993, before they all departed for school in a few weeks. That sounds really fun, a little scavenger hunt with your friends.
Yeah, I did a scavenger hunt once with a church youth group.
Same. Trisha drove home around 1 a.m. after dropping her friends off, and it was the last time anyone saw her alive.
Oh.
Trisha's father, Rick, discovered her dead on the front steps the next morning. Her arm had been fractured, and she had been stabbed 12 times.
Oh my God.
She was only 18.
Oh.
DNA was discovered under her fingernails, but due to the lack of forensic technology at the time, investigators were unable to identify a suspect using the samples.
Yeah, it would have been real new then.
Gargiulo was questioned by authorities during the investigation into Trisha's death, obviously, because he transported her to a friend's house in his car 2 days before she was murdered.
Oh.
Gargiulo, on the other hand, implicated another adolescent in the interrogation. Thus, authorities were unable to press charges.
Couldn't have done a little bit more detective work and figured out who was lying.
Right? Like, you're going to just take his word than another kid?
Oh, he said he didn't do it. Okay, let's go home.
Literally. The 90s. The inquiry was passed over to the cold case team when the search for her killer was over. Her family was heartbroken because their daughter deserved justice.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, if technology had been more sophisticated in the 90s, they would have quickly apprehended her killer.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, the cold case team matched Gargiulo's DNA to the skin recovered beneath Trisha's nails in 2003, but he was never charged.
Oh.
And I think in the episode I watched, they were saying because it was such a little amount, like it was kind of contact DNA, so it could have been from when she was in his car.
So it wouldn't have held up in court super well.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it was just kind of like contact DNA
Gotcha.
kind of thing. So, yeah. When her parents learned of this, they were outraged because their daughter's killer was still on the loose and they wanted justice for her.
Yeah.
Gargiulo remained in Illinois for a few more years after being accused of murder. He couldn't control the anger he had inside of him, though. Yeah, he can't go get help, apparently. Gargiulo attacked and sexually abused a classmate in 1995 after concluding a relationship with her, I guess. I don't know if it was kind of just like, friends with benefits kind of thing, or if it was kind of something more. They didn't really go into it.
Okay. Gotcha.
She said she couldn't move because she was frightened of what he would do to her when she subsequently testified at his trial.
Yeah, I mean, from what you hear, I would be afraid as well.
Yeah. Gargiulo was also arrested for breaking into cars and was involved in a violent incident at his high school. He was sentenced to 18 months of probation and a $200 fine after pleading guilty to burglary.
Are you telling me that he has already murdered and sexually assaulted someone before he was even 18 years old?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, because he was younger than Trisha, because he was her brother's friend.
Yeah. Wow.
Because he felt that he was innocent, and he still does to this day for all of his crimes, this was likely the final time he would admit to the crimes that he committed.
I hope COVID gets him too.
Wouldn't that be nice? Gargiulo grew tired of public and police monitoring, so he moved to LA with his brother in the late 90s to train in martial arts and boxing.
Oh God.
Right.
He doesn't need any more of that.
No, just add it to the list.
Right.
He found a job as a bouncer at the Rainbow Bar and Grill on Sunset Boulevard in West Hollywood, where he met Tamar Leary and Anthony DiLorenzo, who were two other bouncers. When the three of them were driving around LA in 2000, Gargiulo admitted to the Piccaccio murder, asking them, "You guys ever kill anybody?"
That is not like, let's go get a beer and talk about murder. Like, that's not how things go.
They didn't answer.
I don't blame them.
They were in disbelief.
Absolutely not. I'd be like, yeah, have you?
Yeah.
That's like that, like the joke about like a serial killer, or you pick up a hitchhiker, and so they know that and they say that they're a killer, and then the driver is like, well, that makes two of us, or like that's super rare because like I don't know.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. That's so funny.
Speaking of which, sorry, Jessica, real quick. Rochelle, someone posted that they absolutely loved your bee joke last week.
My bee
Your
joke?
bee joke.
Oh, freebie?
Yeah. All right, sorry, Jess, go ahead.
Wait, here's another bee joke.
Well, wait till the end. Tell us at the end.
No, I'm telling you.
Oh,
now.
okay.
What kind of bees produce milk?
Boobies.
Yeah.
Cute.
Okay, back
right.
to murder and sexual assault.
Yes. Okay, so obviously they didn't answer. So Gargiulo continued, and he said,
Oh
I
God.
have.
Oh God.
I buried a bitch. I left her on the steps for dead. And even though he said this to them, they did not believe him because he was known to exaggerate.
Oh, okay. I can kind of see that, because who in their right mind would just confess that to someone over a beer? So I could see where they'd be like, he's got to be fucking with us.
Well, they're just like driving around in a car.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Sorry.
Like, it's
I was
just
picturing
wild.
them in a bar. I don't know why.
They're bouncers.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
So the guys didn't tell anybody about this talk because obviously they didn't think it was a legitimate conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But they did bring it up years later when Gargiulo was apprehended. He was fired from the Rainbow a few months after the talk with these guys in the car because he struck a customer.
Oh, God.
He made the decision to change careers and began working as an air conditioning and heating repairman.
Gosh.
Ashley Ellerin, who lived a few blocks away from him in Hollywood, became Gargiulo's friend that fall. When he noticed her and her friends outside her house, he volunteered to assist them in repairing a flat tire, which also kind of gives me Bundy vibes.
Yeah.
Bundy like was selfish. He was getting them to help him.
Yeah, that's true. But still gives
He
me those
wasn't
vibes.
offering no help to no one. This guy's very helpful, and unfortunately, just happens to be a killer.
He offered Ellerin his business card in case she needed help with her air conditioning, and he was smitten by her. So he began paying her visits at really weird hours.
Oh God.
He was once seen in the middle of the night in a car outside her house.
Oh.
She didn't think much of him at first, but she began to avoid him after observing he lingered too long.
Probably just gave her the creeps. Probably just one of those guys where she's like, he just gives me the creeps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was known to date young actors such as Vin Diesel and Ashton Kutcher.
What?
Yeah.
Where'd her go?
Which made Gargiulo feel inferior.
Yeah, you better feel inferior.
Ellerin was meant to attend to a Grammy after party with Kutcher, who was on that 70s show at the time.
Okay.
And this was supposed to be on February 21st, 2001. Around 8:24 p.m., Kutcher contacted Ellerin and spoke to her for the last time.
Aww.
He was late picking her up and called at 10 o'clock to tell her that he was running late, but she didn't respond.
I have never heard this. This is crazy.
Isn't it weird?
Yeah.
Ellerin didn't answer the door when Kutcher arrived at her house at around 10:45. He imagined she had bailed on him since he was running late for her to pick up. Yeah, okay. Before leaving her house, Kutcher peered through the window and noticed what he assumed was red wine on the carpet.
Oh no.
But obviously it was not red wine.
Oh wow.
Ellerin's roommate returned home the next day to find Ashley in a pool of blood on the landing outside her bedroom. Trigger warning.
Okay.
She'd been stabbed 47 times with some wounds measuring nearly 6 inches deep.
Oh my gosh.
Whoever did this to her was so angry and held so much rage and resentment towards her.
Yeah.
So just awful.
Yeah.
Ellerin's family and acquaintances were interviewed by detectives. They began hunting for a friend that Ellerin referred to as Mike the Furnace Man after learning more about her life. The LAPD discovered her friend was actually Michael Gargiulo after some investigation, and they had his photo.
Oh, good.
Detectives from the Cook County Sheriff's Cold Case section were re-examining the Trisha Pacaccio murder around the same time as Ellerin's death. They retested the DNA found under Trisha's fingernails and took samples from everyone who had contact with her around the time of her death, including Gargiulo. In 2002, Cook County detectives traveled to Los Angeles and spoke with LAPD police probing Ellerin's death. Is this who you're looking for? The detectives on Ellerin's case questioned when they arrived to the LAPD station, holding up a picture of Gargiulo. When the Cook County officers inquired about how they knew him, they were informed that Gargiulo was a possible suspect in another case. Gargiulo was eventually apprehended by the cops, and he struggled with them before being taken to the hospital for a DNA sample.
Idiot.
Yeah. It was a match for the DNA found under Trisha's nails, though.
Good.
Yes. The Cook County State Attorney's Office refused to charge Gargiulo, claiming that DNA may be shared through casual contact. Yeah. Meanwhile, the LAPD had no tangible evidence linking Gargiulo to the murder of Ellerin, so he was not charged.
Oh my God. I really like that name, Ellerin, by the way.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the fact that he was a dangerous individual, he was permitted to roam the streets, because why not?
Let's just let them all roam the streets.
Oh, yeah. Trisha's family was outraged that he was not in jail, and no one knew if he'd ever be apprehended.
Yeah, I don't blame him.
Like, could you imagine?
No.
Gargiulo allegedly hit one of his previous girlfriends in the face and threatened to murder her in 2003.
Oh my God.
He claimed that he was able to get away with it because of his substantial forensic knowledge.
I mean, at this point, he's gotten away with a bunch of other things, so why not?
Yeah. They met when she hired him to service her air conditioner, and he showed up wearing blue surgical shoe covers.
Weird.
Gargiulo began stalking her after pleading with her to go on a date with him. Because she was so afraid of what he would do to her, she had to get a restraining order against him.
Oh, wow.
He must not have wanted to be arrested for fear of being linked to previous crimes, so he stopped harassing her.
Okay. Good for her.
Yeah. By late 2005, Gargiulo had moved to El Monte, a suburb east of Los Angeles, with another woman. Maria Bruno, a mother of 4, resided across the courtyard of their apartment building. And it's kind of like one of those, gated apartment complexes that kind of looks like a motel.
Gotcha.
Yeah, with like a pool in the middle kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So on December 1st, 2005, only 10 days after Bruno moved into the building, she was killed.
Okay. If police don't figure something out by now, I'm going to be real pissed.
Yeah. So Gargiulo crept into Bruno's house through the kitchen window in the early hours of the morning, and he murdered her.
How terrifying.
Her body wasn't discovered until the next day, and her death was the most awful one yet.
Oh, no.
So if you thought Elleren's was bad,
buckle up, sweetie.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Her breasts were severed, and one was placed over her mouth.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And she had multiple stab wounds on top of all of that. And like, can you imagine that her children were probably the ones that found her?
Oh my God. I hope at least most of that was done prior or after she had passed. Hopefully she didn't have to live through all of that.
I hope so.
Yeah.
The only clue, though, that was uncovered by investigators at the scene of Bruno's murder was a blue surgical shoe cover with a drop of Bruno's blood on it.
Oh, you mean the fact that they already had his DNA at another murder scene and then he moved in here and 10 days later this lady was brutally murdered, stabbed as the same as the other one was not a hint?
Yeah, I know. Isn't it awful? The investigation fell cold since police couldn't come up with anything to serve as a basis for a subject or suspectiness.
Yeah, they had no idea. I mean, how could you figure that out? There's nothing. How would you ever know?
There's literally no one.
No one.
They couldn't figure out how someone could perform such awful killings while leaving no trace. People were scared that there was a serial killer on the loose. Gargiulo, on the other hand, was moving on to another woman since he couldn't murder 2 people in the same place without raising suspicions. I guess we also kind of have to think about the fact that LA is a really big city.
It is.
So it could be hard because like there's probably a lot of killings that go on, and it could be hard to potentially link, right, without a lot of evidence.
Yeah, depending on how well their systems talk.
Yeah, exactly. In Santa Monica, he began dating and living with a woman, and it was there that he met his next and final victim. Michelle Murphy lived across the alley from Gargiulo's second-story flat. Or second floor flat? Is there a difference?
No, there's no difference.
Okay. He had a straight line of sight into her bedroom, and the petite 27-year-old appeared to be an easy target.
Aww.
Murphy woke on April 28th, 2008, to see a man with a hoodie and a baseball cap stabbing her in the chest.
Oh my God.
Despite her short stature of 5'1", she put up a valiant struggle against her assailant.
Good for her.
Murphy battled with all of her might, and while they fought over his blade, Murphy's assailant cut himself. He muttered, "I'm sorry," and then fled her apartment.
Oh my gosh.
Murphy was lucky to be alive, and she immediately dialed 911. When authorities looked into Murphy's attack, they compared the DNA to Gargiulo's sample from the Trisha Pacaccio case in a national database. They finally had enough evidence to make an arrest at long last.
Finally, damn, get this guy off the freaking streets.
Gargiulo was arrested for attempted murder in June 2008 and was released on a $1.1 million bail. Gargiulo's car was searched, and a bag of tools and blue shoe covers were discovered. The matching booty from the Bruno crime scene was discovered during a subsequent search of his prior Almonte apartment. Gargiulo's DNA matched the substance found on the booty as well. In September 2008, Gargiulo was charged with the murders of Bruno and Ellerin after a DNA match was discovered. It took another 3 years for prosecutors in Cook County, Illinois, to believe they had enough evidence to charge him. And Gargiulo was finally charged in July 2011 with the 1993 murder of Trisha Pacaccio.
Oh, God.
Pacaccio's family finally received the justice they had hoped for since their daughter was cruelly murdered outside their home. Gargiulo's trial would take over a decade to begin and even longer until he was sentenced.
Oh my gosh.
But he was still optimistic that he would get away with his crimes after his arrest.
Of course he was.
Yeah. He allegedly informed police in the LA County Jail that just because his DNA was found on 10 women doesn't mean he murdered them.
Of course not.
And this prompted investigators to assume that there were other victims who had not yet been linked to him. But how come cops hadn't discovered these murders yet if he had killed many more of them?
Yeah. Maybe he was exaggerating like he was known to do, you know?
Well, now they haven't been doing such a great job up to this
True.
point.
Yeah. Gargiulo only went to trial for those charges that they could truly prove because there was no hard proof to back up his, like, him saying that, you know, there's a bunch of other women out there.
Yeah.
How did he get away with it for so long when the cops in his hometown could have apprehended him at least 5 years ago? And I'll tell you that next week.
Oh, there's more?
I'm only on page 5 of 8.
Oh my gosh. All right.
It's like his trial coming up kind of thing. And
Okay, well, awesome. I'm excited to hear how it goes next week, but I'm glad he finally got freaking caught.
oh yeah, and yeah. It's
He
exciting.
gets his in the end.
He really does. It's
Oh, good.
amazing.
Good. Did you guys have any good jokes?
Knock knock.
Who's there?
Who's there?
Howie.
Howie who?
How we gonna hide this body?
Too soon. Okay. Did you guys hear about that mummy that they discovered in Egypt?
No.
He was covered in nuts and chocolate.
What?
I don't get it.
He was Pharaoh Rocher. Get it?
Fucking love Ferrero Rocher. They're so good.
Pharaoh Rocher.
That's really funny.
Oh my god.
I didn't realize there was gonna be more after the nuts and chocolate.
I didn't either. And I was like, I don't get it.
I was giggling too much. I couldn't follow through.
Like, Jess, we need to sit you down and talk about what a funny joke is.
Oh my gosh, I saved that video on TikTok because I'm like, I gotta tell that at the next recording. Oh my God.
Oh, here's a good one. What do you call a sleeping bull?
I don't know.
A bulldozer.
So stupid.
Oh, bull.
So yeah, Sleeping Bull.
Bulldozer.
That's funny.
I love it.
All right. Well, if you want more of this lovely humor, you can find us at historiesandmysteries.ca. We are also on Facebook and Instagram, Histories and Mysteries Podcast.
And if you'd like to rate and review us, we would really appreciate it. You can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts for your rating and reviewing pleasure.
Rochelle, what you got for the Ripper episode?
Tell us all your favorite times of being ripped. Fuck, I don't know. Get ripped. Hold on.
Tell us what your near-death experience is, like Rochelle.
I would not like to think of that as a near-death experience.
Oh my god.
But yeah, every time walking through like that area, Hyde Park and stuff in Leeds, you just kind of have it in the back of your mind.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I felt very safe in England.
Good.
For all
Good.
of our UK folks, if we have any listening.
We do.
I love England. It's special to me, has a place in my heart. Despite their insane murders.
All right. We look forward to bringing you 2 news stories next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.